USC, Michigan. Just put those two school brands in one sentence, and it brings back memories of Rose Bowls and days gone by. And the two will hit the field in September. We will provide for you a look at Michigan football and an early preview here on Trojan Conquest Live, right here at the Voice of College Football for a 105th edition. We appreciate, of course, the guys that make it all work right here on our USC football, at the Voice of College Football, Matt Zemek right below me, and Tim Prangley, Trojans Wire for both of these guys. And then we got a special guest tonight, TJ, coming in from the Michigan channel. You can catch TJ on Tuesday and Thursday nights. The big call-in show is Thursday at 9 Eastern. Guys, how we doing tonight?
Great. Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah. And TJ, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. I've been excited to have USC join the Big Ten now. I'm pro expansion or realignment. So, just to have you guys join us and a couple of the other Pac-12 teams, even annoying Oregon, right? I'm happy to see the Big Ten get to the level of an SEC in terms of premier matchups every week. It's going to be a good year, man.
Comments and questions are welcome, certainly in the chat. We will get to the super chats. We always appreciate the contributions, folks. And we will get right to it. Michigan and USC. So, TJ, I'll kick it off, and then I'll turn things over to Matt and to Tim. So, with the four schools coming in from the Pac-12, some people have the perspective that, hey, Oregon looks like they're the best team right now. So, this is what we're focused on. This is who we're competing with. Some of us have a little bit more of a traditional sense and are a bit of a purist. So there obviously is levels to this, as they say, and USC's on the top shelf by far when we look historically. Does that matter to you? Is there a magic to hearing USC and Michigan? Will there be any kind of allure historically to that matchup for you in September?
For me, yeah. I think especially like when you go back to like the history of the Rose Bowl or, the history of, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. That those two conferences have been, neutral for so long, right? I think, a blue blood like USC against a blue blood like Michigan is, it's on the level of it's going to be interesting to see the rivalry grow, because I want to say it's on the level of a Notre Dame, but it's obviously not. But it could build to that, over time with the new addition to the Big Ten. So, yeah, I think it's gigantic, especially to see these brands clash on the football field. It's going to be a great, especially in September. I can't even wait for it.
Well, I was talking about the history of this thing. The last time USC and Michigan played, not in the Rose Bowl, as I should say, was back in 1958 in Ann Arbor. That's quite a long stretch there. But as far as you think the fan base is concerned, do you think, is there a lot of hostility? Like Mark was saying, is there hostility towards the brand? Is there hostility towards SC, or is it really, it's been so long, 2007 since we faced? Is a lot of that kind of been washed away, or what are the expectations, or what are the feelings going into the game?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's hostility at all. I think it's mutual respect. I think a lot of us are, so not only on the message boards, but even just people I talk with, like a lot of people are just excited to have these matchups. I think more people are more hostile towards Oregon than USC, to be honest, because one, they're a newer, aggressive brand, and you got Phil Knight backing Oregon, right? But no, I think it's a welcomed addition to the Big Ten. I don't think there's hostility at all. And I think people realize also, like, we're going to be in for some juggernaut, elite matchups going forward. So no, I don't get that vibe from the Michigan fan base at all.
TJ, when we look at the quarterbacks, obviously a huge pair of question marks in this game. And it's not really even an evaluation of the players. It's just a product of their relative lack of reps on Saturdays, live action, meaningful situations. What are your impressions of Miller Moss and, of course, Alex Orji?
Yeah, so Alex Orji and Davis Warren would be, and then you also have Jack Tuttle, but I'm personally not a Jack Tuttle fan. So really, to me, it's a two quarterback battle. heading into the spring game, there was a lot more uncertainty and a little bit of discomfort because they're unproven. Alex Orji is a hell of an athlete, but his arm is not. We don't know what his arm is. We don't know what he's quite capable of. In high school, he was in the 50s for completion percentage. So has he improved? Has he grown? In the spring game, he did show improvement. I think a lot of us after the spring game are more comfortable with our QB situation, but it's still a big unknown. And I'll also add quarterback and wide receiver are the biggest unknowns for Michigan. And because we have a lot of young wide receivers that now have to replace previous wide receivers who went to the draft, like Ronnie Bell and Cornelius Johnson. And then quarterback-wise, we just don't know what we have. They are unproven, and we're going to find out together. That is the ceiling for Michigan will depend on the quarterback situation.
The line play, you guys have lost a lot of guys up front. Can you just fill us in? There's a lot of concerns for USC on the defensive side. Can you fill us in a little bit about the depth and newcomers on the offensive side of the ball and offensive line in particular?
Yeah, so I have my projected offensive line right now is left tackle. We have Miles Hinton, who was a transfer from Stanford. He previously had starting experience at Stanford. At left guard, we have Giovanni El Hadi, who was a former top 100 commit, extremely big-bodied offensive guard. He's like in the 320s, 6'5". At center, we have Greg Crippen, who's going to be a junior this year. He's going to be filling in for Drake Nugent, who was an extremely good player for us last year. And then at right guard, we got Josh Preby, who is a transfer from Northwestern, extremely good player. I'm very confident in Josh Preby. There's a lot of talk out of Ann Arbor that he's actually going to be our best offensive lineman next year. And then at right tackle, I will say, is potentially the biggest question mark. And I've gotten word out of Ann Arbor that they were portal shopping for a right tackle because they don't know if Andrew Gentry, who's also a former top 100 recruit, but he's one of those players that did the 2-year Mormon mission. So he came in and he had to adjust last year. And then now he's going to get the opportunity to be right tackle. But the intel from spring camp is he had ups and downs. So there's a little unknown at right tackle. But right now I got Andrew Gentry penciled in at right tackle. And I expect the offensive line play to be at an elite level. I really do. I don't think it's going to drop much. Sharon Moore does a great job of getting these guys prepared. A lot of these guys have been in the system for 2-3 years. And we have a great strength and conditioning program where we literally reload. You saw our best offensive lineman last year, Zach Zinner, get injured, and they put Trente Jones at the right tackle spot, and they moved Carson Barnhart to left guard, and our offensive line actually got better when we lost our best offensive lineman. So, it's just that is one position group where I'm not too concerned. Obviously, it's new faces, but I expect the offensive line play to be at a high level.
Following up on the matchup between USC's defensive line and Michigan's offensive line, obviously with the uncertainties that you have at quarterback, it does bring up the point that, we do not need to guess on this point. Michigan will want to establish the run first. It'll be run first and then see if it can do play action, throw up after establishing the run in this game. If you put yourself in Danton Lynn's shoes as USC defensive coordinator, just kind of sizing up the Michigan offense as you see it right now. If you're Danton Lynn and USC, are you basically stacking the box the whole first quarter and just saying, hey, you have to throw early in this game? We are going to put numbers up front, and you're going to have to do something through the air or perhaps on the perimeter. Would that be how you would attack this Michigan offense early, or do you think Michigan's balance might be getting a little bit undersold?
Yeah, well, it depends on the quarterback. So if we have Alex Orji, right, then he's a dual threat quarterback. He's very gifted athlete. I fear that stacking the box is going to limit Michigan's offensive potential. Now, if Davis Warren wins the quarterback battle, he has the better arm. He has a stronger arm, more accurate arm, but he's not as mobile, right? So it really comes down to what quarterback is behind the center. If it's Alex Orji, I think stacking the box could really be a kryptonite. I think that's a potential kryptonite for Michigan. I think again though, let's also if Alex Orji can prove with his arm, and I expect Alex Orji to be a solid short to medium quality passer there, but his long ball is just I don't see it, and I don't think it's going to improve. If it's Davis Warren though, I don't know if stacking the box is going to be enough. I think our wide receiver weapons should be good enough to keep defenses honest, and Davis Warren I do believe can keep a defense honest. So it will come down to the quarterback. But I'll say this though, I don't know if our quarterback can win us the game if you shut the run down. Like, that's unproven. We don't have the answer there yet.
Although, TJ, you did say at one point that Davis Warren's probably a better athlete than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah, so the word out of Ann Arbor is that he actually is a very gifted athlete. We just don't see him run a lot. He's obviously a pass-first quarterback, but I've gotten word that he's actually one of the better athletes. But we haven't quite seen it translate to the field yet. I mean, he did break off a run in the spring game for 26 yards, but there's no tackling in the spring game, and they take it a little easier on quarterbacks. So, you can't put too much stock into it.
All right. Well, if you're the offensive coordinator for USC, right, how would you attack this Michigan defense? I mean, you guys have some missing parts on, but it's a pretty strong, stout defense. You guys returned some key pieces with Graham and Grant, especially Will Johnson, right? Who kind of showed out.
Yep.
Where do you feel the weakness would be on your defense?
Yeah, so I believe we are going to be an elite defense this year. I feel pretty confident in saying it will be top 10, possibly top 5. Wink Martindale is the new defensive coordinator. We lost a lot of coaches to the NFL, Mike McDonald and stuff. But in theory, because Wink Martindale is very aggressive, I would say you would want to keep the defense honest by a few long balls, and then when the defense is aggressive, maybe some like plays out the backfield, running back slants, quick slants to get the ball out, because the defense is going to be coming. Like, we're definitely going to be blitzing a lot. Wink Martindale is known as Dr. Blitz. So yeah, I would say quick slants, and then keeping the defense honest with the deep ball would probably be the best bet. I do not think anyone's going to have success running the ball on us. Like, it's just not going to happen this year. I don't see anyone doing it. Go on.
Sorry to follow up on that. How different is the defense going to be now? You have Martindale coming, and then you have Minter, right? Minter came from that tree.
Yeah, correct.
What do you with his Minter's departure, but then Martindale coming in? How much different schematically is this defense going to be?
Not a lot different, because Wink Martindale is actually the architect of the defense. It's just what Mike McDonald did and then Jesse Minter did. They just evolved it with a little more coverage disguises, which is what really helped us against teams like Ohio State, because they didn't know what they were looking at. But I think the defense is going to be very similar, but I do expect the aggressiveness and the blitzing to increase. And we've looked, so a lot of people at the Michigan fan base have been concerned that Wink Martindale's a little too blitz happy, but a lot of people have run the numbers of what he did for the Giants and Baltimore. And what we found is his blitzing is opponents specific, right? So every game is not the same amount of blitzes. He does tone it down. He does play more cover 2 and cover 3 with certain opponents. So I would think a team like yours, he might tone that down a little bit because you guys are obviously an aggressive offense with Lincoln Riley. So it'll be interesting to see the chess match. I think Wink Martindale I think it's going to be a pretty smooth transition. I really do. And by all accounts, like, everybody loves him. Like, he's really he's like the type of guy you want to have a beer with, So we'll see what happens. It was a big coaching turnover for University of Michigan, but everyone seems to be assembling very nicely and familiar with the scheme, like the coaches we've brought in. So that's how I do it.
About this game in general, TJ, two items emerge. One is it's mid-afternoon. It's not Fox Big Noon. So like USC's not dealing with the body clock issue as a West Coast team. And the other part of this is it's an early season game. It's first up on the Big Ten schedule. How much of a deal, how big a deal is it for those two? And I think especially the fact that this is a September game as opposed to a late October, early November game. Neither team will have been especially established. Both teams trying to kind of feel their way into the season. I mean, you could spin this as, USC's the less proven program. Michigan's defending national champion, but Michigan obviously has some key concerns at some very important nerve center positions, quarterback most of all. So like getting this game early, how do you think that's going to play? How do you think that moves the needle on this game?
Well, I think it's going to be huge. I mean, so I'm not familiar with you guys' non-conference schedule. I think you guys actually who's because we play Texas. Who do you guys? I know you have a big game. Who's the opponent you guys have in the non-conference?
Little school called LSU and Notre Dame on our.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you guys are going to be tested early. We're going to be tested with Texas. I think both teams are going to be, mid-season form by the time the game comes. I like that we're playing early. I mean, it would have been nice to get you guys in like November at the big house, but especially like a night game, that would have been epic. But yeah, I mean, I think I think it's good timing for both teams. I think it's a good and we're going to find out both teams early. I mean, obviously you guys are going to be tested early. We're going to be tested early with non-conference games. Where do we stand in the Big Ten, right? So I like where it's placed. It would have been cool if it was a night game. I'm pro night game guy, but yeah, I don't think it's going to have too much effect for you guys in terms of weather or anything of that nature. So I don't know. I like where it's placed. I mean, would you guys? I'm sure you guys are happy with it being in September too, right?
Well, no, because like I said, Martindale blitzing. If they're going to come blitzing at a team that has, this is going to be there are going to be some young guys starting on our line. So no, I really would have liked this offensive line. Excuse me, to get a little more time together, right? Get some a little more battle tested before they're going to go up against that Martindale attack. So that itself, and plus we don't play Notre Dame till later in the season. We're going to play Utah State right before you guys, and we kick off with LSU. But no, I would definitely, if there was a way to play this game, maybe in October, like late October, that I think that would have been better timing for USC because we don't play late because we're kind of thin, but we have some young pieces that we want to develop. So yeah, so it would have been nice to get you guys in the middle, I think.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, you guys are breaking in a new quarterback too. So yeah, it'll be interesting to, I mean, I'll be honest. Like I actually feel good about the game. But the Texas game is going to decide a lot for me and how confident I really am. I think Michigan's going to be in a good position for that game, but we'll find out. The Texas game could make me very humble.
I got some construction going on next door, so if someone wants to grab the next one.
Okay. Well, let's discuss the Big Ten. I mean, with the new West Coast teams coming in and offering a new and different dynamic, what are you most looking forward to, and what are you most concerned about? I mean, one thing we're looking forward to here at USC is that we don't have to deal with Pac-12 network anymore. We're going to be on Big Ten network, going to be on Fox, a lot more. The scheduling's interesting with the Rutgers game starting at 11 p.m. in New Jersey and out there in the East. Like the Rutgers and Maryland and Northwestern home games, those are going to be late starts for us, and you're going to have BTN on into the middle of the night. So all these new things that are going to be part of your life as a Michigan observer, what are you most excited about, and what are you most concerned about?
Yeah. All right. So I love it. Like I really am I'm through the moon with like you adding you guys to the conference. I mean, what I am really looking forward to is style of play, seeing the Big Ten style clash with the Pac-12 style, the trenches. Like, does your guys' style work? I mean, because this is now the Big Ten, right? You're not playing Arizona, you're not playing Oregon State. They're pretty good. They got better, obviously. At the wrong time, poor Oregon State. You're
not playing Cal. Not playing Cal.
Yeah,
there we
exactly. Go. But I mean, UCLA is still in the conference. But I mean, it's going to be so fun to watch what Oregon and you guys bring to the table to the Big Ten, and then over time, our team's going to transition more your guys' style, or you guys are going to transition more Big Ten style. Like, I'm really excited to see that dynamic. What am I concerned about? Honestly, recruiting and can our teams keep up with your guys' fast-paced? Although we do have a bit of that with Ohio State, right? Like, we do have a little bit of that. But you and Oregon are going to be bringing an offense to this conference that a lot of teams haven't seen. Outside of Ohio State, there's really no other offense in the Big Ten that I would even put on Oregon and USC's level. I mean, Maryland was what? I mean, Mark, what would you say was the second most explosive or best offense in the Big Ten out after Ohio State? I mean, Maryland was pretty good.
Yeah, Maryland.
Yeah.
In terms of talent, probably Penn State, but in terms of but in terms of putting it together, when Talia was there, but man, their quarterback situation, they're not going to be nearly as explosive this year.
Right. So so your guys' offense, and then your NIL game with recruiting, like you guys are aggressive recruiting programs. Like that's going to be a problem. Like we now have to deal with Oregon. I mean, you always have to, like, you have, these national brands are always going to, be battling for different recruits. But now that we're in the same conference, you're going to Midwest kids and Northeast kids are going to be seeing USC and Oregon now. They're going to be far more familiar with those brands. So that's a little bit of a concern. But I mean, it also works both ways. They're not going to get familiar with Ohio State and Michigan, but so I mean, I love it, man. Like we are finally, and I've talked about this on our show, I've been jealous of the SEC. They have all these major matchups every week: LSU, Auburn, Florida. They're at the bottom right now, but Georgia, Alabama. You can go on. Tennessee's gotten good. And now we have this. Like we now have. I mean, every week is going to be almost a playoff. Like, even though the playoffs are expanded, but to see these battles every single week with the Big 12 teams coming in, it's just going to be. I think it's just going to be a great year, man. Honestly.
Just to extend on TJ's point, and Big Ten fans will recognize this. Not to discard the West, but I'm going to discard the West because I did make this point a couple of weeks ago to TJ and the rest of the crew on the Michigan channel that if you sized up the West, the former Big Ten West against the East, top to bottom, there's not as much a disparity as you would think. But obviously, nobody cares about that. They only care about the teams that are competing for championships, and obviously that's all been in the East. And basically, people have looked forward to 3 games for about 7 or 8 years. It's been 3 games in the Big Ten. There's a little region over there that cares about Iowa, Wisconsin, those teams playing. But basically, nationally, you're only looking at 3 games, and you circle those on the calendar, and then the rest of the season, you're like throwing up your arms. When you've got an Ohio State who hasn't lost a Big Ten game other than getting clobbered by Michigan 3 years in a row since 2018, 40 consecutive wins in the conference, that's no competition. So it's been Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, and then the rest of the weeks are like, from a national perspective, nothing. But then you throw in Oregon, Washington, USC. Suddenly, like to TJ's point, we got matchups all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, imagine when USC has to go to Iowa one day, or like Wisconsin in November, like these are going to be epic. Like it's just going to be fun. It's going to be fun just to see these brands on different fields and in different months and different climates. Like it's just, I love it, man. I hope I don't know how you guys feel about the Florida State rumors, but I kind of want to see that added to the conference. Just to see a Florida State team playing Ohio State in November or Wisconsin, like it'd just be, I don't know, I think that'd just be fun.
I think that Lincoln Riley is anticipating those later games, those snow games, because you're starting to see, I mean, it's not like USC didn't go after larger linemen, but when I say large, I'm going to XXL linemen on offensive tackles, guys 6'8", 330 is what they're, is what they're kind of just looking at lately. And I think that there has been a concerted effort to get big on both lines because those are going to be some ugly games. I mean, I remember Will's in the chat. I remember it would be raining in October and cold, but not freezing, but just crap weather. And they go look at us going, "This is football weather." I'm like, God, then you guys aren't playing football the right way, because I'll tell you what, football is not 1925. There is a thing called the forward pass. I mean, I know it's before 25, but my point is like, it'll be ugly, and those games are football, and it is part of football to play in those environments. And USC hasn't played a lot of games, but it's not like USC hasn't played in freezing weather. It's not like they don't play up in Boulder, or they play, at Washington State up in the Palouse, or they go out to Utah, right? It's not like USC only plays in 75 degrees and sunshine. So it's not like they're going to will. And also remember this, Lincoln Riley is getting a lot of crap right now for Why isn't he recruiting enough California kids? I don't think it's concerned either way. I think he's getting the best athletes he can get. But a lot of guys we're getting, are from Texas. They're used to playing in cold weather, getting guys from the Midwest. And we have, Elijah Newby, who's from the Northeast. I mean, it's not like it's a bunch of California blue-eyed surfer kids that are on our football team, or they're going to wilt when the weather goes below 50 degrees. I mean, I think that part's a bit overplayed, but it does mitigate some things that we do, right? USC is known for having freakishly fast and athletic athletes. That obviously you're playing in snow, that kind of slows things down, just makes the game a little more muddy, a little bit dirty. But I don't think those games are going to be that often. And it looks like this year they seemed like they went out of their way to make sure it didn't happen. USC's not playing anybody late. And remember, USC every year is going to play Notre Dame. Is going to play UCLA, I believe, at the end of the season. So that's a November game right there. This could be almost guaranteed every November for USC. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I've heard from lots of people and off of my memory. And again, I'm just wearing a T-shirt. My whole family's from Michigan. It's not like it's ice cold, in October and even in November. Sometimes it's not like you guys are freezing. It's not like 5 degrees and you have to wear, all this protective gear in order to play a football game. So it's gonna be interesting. Right. I mean, it's a great point, but I think that's overplayed a little bit.
My thoughts on this one. When it matters, it matters. Meaning there will be games that look horrendous and are difficult where the weather is a factor. So when it matters, it will matter. But those are few and far between. At the end of November, if you look up the average temperature in Columbus, Ohio, it's almost 60 degrees. And I know Columbus, Ohio is in the southern portion of the Big Ten footprint to a certain extent. But to your point, Tim, they're basically going to balance the schedule and 4 Saturdays in November for USC, 2 at home, 2 on the road. So you're going to play UCLA. So you're going to play 2 in Southern California or 3 in Southern California for sure. So you're only concerned about 1, maybe 2 games, and it's not that bad. And some of the best cold weather players in the history of the NFL started out playing at places like Southern Miss and Alabama.
Well, there's a guy called Anthony Munoz, and if you're older like some of us, he grew up in Southern California.
Exactly.
He also played in the ice, but he played in the coldest game I think on record. It was back in the time, and played sleeveless and just played because he's an athlete and he's tough. So I mean, I don't think that the players are going to will. I do think the style of play though, Mark. I do think that will change. It'll play it. I think it levels the playing field a little bit. It mitigates some of that athleticism and then more like just like, rugby play, where it's just moving the line and see who can pick up, and matriculate down the field. That's something that they'll have to look at. But I agree with you guys on the fact that it's overplayed. I really do. The weather's just kind of a bit overdone.
What would you say, TJ? The last 2 weekends of the Big Ten season, that's kind of where it shows up somewhere. It's like the last 2 weekends. It's like, okay, look at it. Look at what it's doing at Camp Randall Stadium today. That's about where it shows up.
I mean, I'd say, I'd argue this though. I mean, listen, it snows sometimes in October in Michigan. That's how weird it is. Like there are days where it will just be cold as hell and it'll snow a lot, and then it'll be like 50 degrees 2 days later. What I'm saying is there's going to come a time. It won't be this year because your guys' schedule doesn't really put you guys in a northern game on the road, but later in the year. But what I'm saying is, like, there's going to come a game where you're going to be in Minnesota, you're going to be in Wisconsin, you're going to be at Ann Arbor, you could be at Columbus. The weather will have an effect. And listen, we just had a game 2 years ago where Ohio State was blaming the weather. Like, it's going to have. Mark loved that one, but there's going to be a game. Like, do you remember Penn State versus Minnesota? Remember that game, Mark, where Minnesota won? Or was it 2 years ago? That Snow Bowl game. Like, there's going to be a game like that where it will have an impact. It won't be all the time, and it isn't all the time for all the other games either. But it's just every now and then it plays a role, especially when you're in a freaking Iowa or a Wisconsin. Like, there's just something about these locations where it's just difficult as hell to get these victories sometimes. And and like when we're talking about style of play, look, we played Washington in the national title game. They got a taste of Big Ten football, right? So Joe Moore award-winning offensive line in Washington didn't look very good against a Big Ten style or Michigan's defensive line. Like that's the clashing that's going to happen schematically. Like I think the Big 12 is going to, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. It's not in the Big 12 anymore, but the new teams coming to the Big 10 are going to get that wake up call from just that trench play. And I think a lot of teams in the Big 10 are just going to have that advantage. But as I mentioned earlier, what do you do to keep a defense honest? Well, you guys are an aggressive pass happy team. I don't want to say pass happy, but you're very aggressive through the air, and keeping the defense honest that way is going to be the Pac-12, or I keep saying Pac-12, but the new additions to the Big 10 that's going to be their way to survive the physical play, coming into the Big 10.
TJ, give us a bigger picture perspective on Michigan and its evolution into an annual playoff team and a national champion. Because here at USC, we're in the wilderness. We're searching for the restoration. We're searching to be back to Pete Carroll standard. And so in many ways, USC in 2024 is like what Michigan was 2019, 2020, before Harbaugh got everything on track in 2021. For our USC audience here at the Voice of College Football, what was it that Harbaugh and Michigan did in terms of finding the solution, cracking the code, not just solving Ohio State, but really just dramatically raising the ceiling for the program? What went into it, and what are the lessons USC fans and fans of other schools in similar situations can take from what Michigan finally was able to do 2021, 2022, 2023?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is culture change, culture buy-in. So we had a locker room problem. We didn't have leaders. We were recruiting kids who wanted things handed to them. We changed our recruiting strategy in terms of the ways we started recruiting players. And then the big thing was there was a big coaching haul. So Jim Harbaugh almost got fired. Everybody knows this after the COVID year. His salary got reduced. His back was against the wall, and he literally said, "We're going to win or we're going to die trying." That's just where it was. So he went all in. He actually changed his philosophy too. So before Michigan had this speed and space offensive scheme that Josh Gaddis brought in, and it was terrible. We just couldn't do it. They couldn't teach it to the players, even though we had great athletes like Donovan Peoples-Jones who went to the NFL, or Nico Collins who went to the NFL, and then Tariq Black was actually our best receiver before he broke his foot. He then transferred to Texas. He didn't make it to the NFL, but it just wasn't working. And then also we had a defensive scheme where the Big Ten learned, like they understood how to beat it with Don Brown. So he completely revamped it, brought in new coaches. He actually went to his brother and asked for his best minds. So he brought in Mike McDonald and Coach Weiss, who brought in the Ravens run system. So essentially a whole new schematic change, a culture, a new identity in the culture. And Aiden Hutchinson was a major reason for changing the culture at Michigan. The players like that, they really helped instill it with the players, because the coaches can only do so much. So the players also have to buy in. So it was really that. So a complete philosophy change in terms of the scheme, complete culture overhaul for the program. And, and then they just believed, they bought in, and when your back's against the wall, that's when people really do make changes. Like when you're literally, you don't have a choice and you're in a corner and you either got to fight your way out or you will die trying. That's how you do it, and I don't think you can ask anybody, even Michigan fans, and I'm sure you guys know about this. There was half the fan base wanted Jim gone.
Yeah.
And I'll even raise my hand. I wanted Matt Campbell at the time from Ohio State. I was like, we got to get Matt Campbell, So Jim Harbaugh proved a lot of people wrong, myself included, because I got to the point where I was like, we're now trending down. So, and a big thing too was recruiting JJ McCarthy. Like that kid was a major, granted, Cade McNamara was the quarterback for our first Big Ten title, but because of JJ McCarthy and kids like that, Blake Corum and, Aiden Hutchinson, etc., we then learned through losing in the playoffs how to win. Losing taught us to win. And then over time, the team got to the point where we were the top team in the country, and we beat Alabama, and then we beat Washington, and then we got our national title. So it was really a gradual climb to the mountaintop.
For the record, I became the Harbaugh apologist. I stuck up for him. I said keep him. Those videos and live streams are all out there. So I was the guy that showed a little faith in Jimbo there.
I don't know. John's calling you out, Mark.
What? Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, no, my bad. No, I read it wrong. Sorry. Reading is fundamental. My bad. He's saying that he was calling for Harbaugh back in 21. My bad. Not you. My bad.
I'm on record many times. That's the one thing you can't get away from when you run a YouTube channel. It's all out there.
Well, so we really haven't gone into too much detail. If we're talking about on the macro level and the management and everything, I know Sharon Moore obviously coached that Ohio State game, correct? So, I mean, it's not like, is that right? So, I mean, he's won some big games for Michigan. What's the biggest difference that you've seen just as a program? I know it's not a lot of times gone by. You have a lot of that senior, and the upperclassmen leadership that's probably to carry over from the past regime. But has there been any fundamental shift or any changes that you've seen just in this short amount of time? Again, I do understand that not much change will happen because the players are all, and Sharon Moore was part of the program, probably a big part of that program, the toughness up front, the offensive line. What have you seen that's different about this team? Just maybe when Jim Harbaugh was a very polarizing character, let's just say, right? How has it changed as far as a program at Michigan?
Yeah, so there's actually been a lot of change. Now, obviously, some things are going to transfer. Like they're obviously going to keep their power run smash identity. That's going to be the same. But I'd actually say I think Sharon's more aggressive than Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was very old school. Sharon's more, I would say, innovative. Like our recruiting department got a complete overhaul. We now have over 20 people in our recruiting department. Before it was around 10. Maybe even less, actually, now that I think about it. It might have been around 8, the whole recruiting department. So he's doubled the recruiting department. Sharon is way more player-friendly than Jim Harbaugh, as crazy as that sounds. Like, Sharon Moore, especially with recruiting, Jim Harbaugh used to have a policy where he wouldn't really engage in recruiting until things got really close or was a player of an elite magnitude. And then even then, he wouldn't even build a relationship with the player until it got close to closing, where Sharon is like open door policy. He's building relationships with these kids a lot more. And then I'd also say he's younger. So there's like a younger vibe with the program. The coaches he's bringing in, I think are also all aggressive, where Jim brought in a lot of his friends and Sharon's kind of bringing in people who fit schematically to the defense. So I think the identity is going to remain the same in the sense of obviously physical, aggressive, and then defensively, it was key to keep the same defensive philosophy and scheme, which is why they hired Wink Martindale, and they also brought in Lamar Morgan, who worked with Jesse Minter previously. So that's why they went with those coaching hires. But yeah, I think a lot of it will be the same. I will say this. With Kirk Campbell now as offensive coordinator, because he was promoted offensive coordinator, they have said they want to adapt the playbook to be more aggressive through the air. But they've also said that's going to be dependent on who wins the quarterback battle. Because obviously, if it's Alex Orji, his capabilities you can only do so much. If it's Davis Warren, I do think they will be more aggressive through the air. But we'll see, because a lot of coaches will say these things, but when we step on the field on Saturday, we'll find out, were they honest about it, or are we going to stick to being run first all the time? So that's to be determined.
I know this is a USC show, but it's also, a Big Ten show. Like the Big Ten and the new landscape is part of this. We talked about this earlier, how the West Coast schools might change the style of play, might change the dynamics of the conference. But then, of course, there's still the old guard. And I'm certainly interested in how you see Ohio State from your perch, covering Michigan. Obviously Ohio State with putting all the chips in the middle of the table with its NIL game. That must feel like a great sign of respect. Like, it was not too long ago that Harbaugh couldn't beat Ohio State, and now it's Ryan Day can't beat Michigan. And like all the folks in Columbus, like they're doing what they're doing because they can't beat you guys. And it also seems as though Michigan is able to do what it's doing as a program without overextending itself in NIL and other realms. Like you have a brand that is so robust that you can get the guys you want without having to drop the bag the way Ohio State's doing, also the way Oregon's doing. But is there a concern that Ohio State's going to start beating you with the bag in future seasons? How does that dynamic feel for you covering Michigan and looking at Ohio State across the way?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, but the problem is they won't acknowledge that we are beating them. They always have a reason why we're beating them, whether it be the weather, whether it be Connor Stallions, whether it be we were 5 plays away from like they won't acknowledge the reality of it. Like it's almost like they can't look in the mirror. I mean, the damn Ohio State football account still hasn't even posted the score of the game last year. Like they just won't even acknowledge it. They're acting like it's not even a thing. But obviously through their actions by being arguably the most aggressive portal team in this last portal season, being far more aggressive with their recruiting. Like I've discussed their NIL. I was talking to you guys off air, but their NIL budget's about 18 million. What I've had confirmed to me. So, they're very aggressive right now. They're all in. So it's very interesting to watch this, and they know they're all in because the truth is, and this is my belief. Some people disagree. I think Mark disagrees with this point. I think if Ryan Day loses this year to Michigan, he's gone. I know there's some Ohio State fans who don't believe that, but so it's very interesting to watch the dynamic shift because we were in a position where we couldn't get the damn victory, even though we did win in 2016. But we're not going to blame the ref. We'll just say we lost. And but yeah, so that it's really interesting to see that dynamic. But in terms of like, what are the concerns in the future if we're looking long term about what Ohio State is doing versus us? Yeah, I think there is some concern with their aggressiveness with recruiting. But like, remember this too: Ohio State they're always a top 5 recruiting team. Like the current, I think one of their best classes was 2000 or 2001 of all time, and that recruiting class, which was number 1 in the nation, is 0-3 against Michigan. So it's not always the stars, and that's what Michigan prides itself on is development, right? And finding hidden gems like Colson Loveland and Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Mike Sanders still, these names that everyone knows. But I as a fan of observing this, yeah, there is some concern about, are we going to lose ground? Because we finally have gotten ourselves to the point of being a top 5 program in college football, and we did just win the national title, and we want to be a perennial college football team, just like everybody wants to be. But we don't want to lose it. We don't want regression because, we have this thing at Michigan where we say sometimes there's this Michigan arrogance where we think the brand is so powerful and strong we don't need to adapt and evolve. But the good news is we actually just as of recently have found out that our recruiting approach is actually evolving, and there's actually been a lot of momentum in recruiting. We're actually just got predicted our quarterback for 2026, who's going to be Brady Hart, which is a major get for us. There's been a lot of predictions for him starting today. Word is he's a silent, so that's very good news. And we've been landing a lot of guys. So I think we're going to get to the point where recruiting is going to start picking up. It's not going to be an Ohio State level or an Oregon level. We're not going to be the highest bidder. Like, that's not going to be Michigan style. But we will find culture guys, and we will be competitive. So now what it comes down to is Sharon the real deal? Because if Sharon's the real deal, we're going to be fine. But if he's not, and he did show himself very well last year in those last 3 games of the year, beating Penn State at Penn State, beating Ohio State, and then beating Maryland as well at Maryland. So it comes down to, is Sharon more the captain or the leader we think he is? And if he is, I think Michigan's going to be okay because they are adapting and evolving, just not as fast as some of the other programs.
You did cover quarterbacks a little bit, but if you want to do the pecking order, maybe if you had to do like, let's say a 3 deep and how close it is between the 3 positions, what are you looking at as far as like Orgy, Tuttle, and Warren? Yeah,
so I would have it personally, and I think they have it too. It's one of those things where publicly they're going to say there's a quarterback battle because 1, you didn't want anyone transferring. 2, you got to make the kids, 1, they got to win the damn job. You hand it to somebody, you're not going to get their best, right? So I believe the current order is Alex Orgy is number 1. I think Davis Warren is number 2, and I think Jack Tuttle's number 3. I don't actually believe Jack Tuttle's in the race. Jaden Davis is a distance 4th. He's a true freshman. I don't see it happening. That's very rare for a true freshman to have an impact. But I think it's really a Davis Warren, Alex Orji battle. And I would be surprised if Alex Orji is not the starting quarterback week 1, or especially week 2 against Texas, because we can't be doing, once that Texas game happens, we cannot have a 2 quarterback system. Somebody's going to have to lead the team on the field. And I do think Alex Orji is going to be the choice. They just seem so invested in Alex Orji. It'd be hard. I think Davis Warren would have to have an amazing fall camp for him to take the lead, but we'll find out,
This is a loose connection between the 3 of everything: Big Ten, USC, UCLA, Michigan, Ohio State. What are your thoughts on Chip Kelly? So you guys have had the number for Ohio State, but Chip Kelly coming over now as offensive coordinator for Ohio State. What do you anticipate troubles with that happening? They got 2 great running backs, and that with Will Howard, they're going to run the ball pretty effectively. Is that any concerns? Almost like they're trying to Michigan. What do you think?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because like Ryan Day is a great offensive mind, and now they just added another high level, one of the better offensive minds in all of football, really. I mean, even when he was in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, they had a good offense. The problem is it gets figured out over time. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting addition. It also shows the desperation to make sure they have all their dots, or their T's crossed and their I's dotted, to make sure that they get the Big Ten back this year. I'm not overly concerned, and the reason why is because Ryan Day is one of the best offensive minds in all of football. In my opinion, I don't think Ryan Day is a good head coach. I don't think he's a leader of men. I think Ryan Day is a elite offensive coordinator. And so adding Chip Kelly is just a little bit more of that. But what's really interesting is we stole their running back coach, Tony Alford, who obviously knows the strategy and the scheme. And we got him in March. So I think we at least have an idea of what they're going to do. We kind of, and we also just stole another staffer from Ohio State pretty recently. So I'm not overly concerned with Chip Kelly, although I do think it's a good addition. Like, I'm not downplaying that at all. I think how crazy is it? A head coach steps down just to be an offensive coordinator somewhere else, But I think he's good, but I'm not. It's not something I'm thinking about at night. It's not bothering me that much.
It should, but okay, we'll move on.
Why? Let me ask you this: who's a better offensive coordinator or a better offensive mind, Ryan Day or Chip Kelly?
I'd take Chip Kelly. So
Really?
Head coach, and we're talking about head coaching situations, recruiting is hands down. Chip Kelly goes back to the line, but I think people, the blur, everyone caught up to that, but yeah, I've seen he's a great game day scheme guy. I've seen him put some pretty good game strategies up that have really crushed USC in recent years. So yeah, he still can, the X's and O's. Yeah, Chip Kelly, recruiter, tragic. Chip Kelly, game day coordinator, or getting them ready for the game. I wonder how much of the offense is going to be Ryan, how much is going to change, because I don't think this is going to be the same kind of Ohio State offense we're used to seeing, as far as the quarterback play is concerned, throwing the ball, the way that you would expect Ohio State to do in previous years. I think this is going to be a heavy run game, and people think Chip Kelly loves to run the ball, and I do think that he's going to do a great job scheming throughout the year.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is Ohio State's offensive line capable of being a consistent power run team? I don't know. I think their offensive line is very questionable. I mean, I know a lot of people would say that's the weakest part of the team.
That's why you bring the X's and O's to mitigate the Jimmies and the Joes. That's what I'm trying to say. When you that's what coaching is okay. There's a reason why they brought him in. Let's just put it that way.
Mark, do you think Chip Kelly's a better offensive mind than Ryan Day?
He's a more proven offensive mind throughout coaching different teams, different situations.
Yeah, I agree with that, but who's had the better offense? It's been Ohio State.
Yeah, well, Ryan Day certainly had much more talent to work with than Chip Kelly's ever had.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a great mind. I mean, he's top 5. Like, I'm not like, so we're talking like we're getting to that like Jordan LeBron argument. Like, we're talking about elite minds right here. But like, I just give the edge to Ryan Day. I guess maybe I just respect Ryan Day's offensive mind to such a degree because I've seen what he's done, you know, and also the way they develop receivers and quarterbacks, it's just insane. So, and I've watched Chip Kelly at UCLA when he was at Oregon, Philadelphia. So, I do think he's great. Like it's not that I don't think he's great. I personally would put Ryan Day ahead of him.
Well, now this definitely makes me ask this question. So why don't we do this, TJ? Offensive minds in the let's just keep it in the Big Ten. Who are your top three offensive minds in the Big Ten?
Okay, so I mean, obviously Ryan Day, but I mean, should we just combine Ryan Day and Chip Kelly because it's Ohio State, or are we trying? They're obviously top three. Period.
If you want to throw them in, if you want to make them one or two together or apart, that's fine.
All right, I'll do Ryan Day 1, Chip Kelly 2, and then let's see, who would I put 3?
Whoa! Chip Kelly ahead of Lincoln Riley?
I was waiting for it. I wasn't even setting this up.
Okay.
No,
it's the new Big Ten. So okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was thinking about our Big Ten, like the old Big Ten. Yeah, I mean, I also put Lincoln Riley like very high, obviously, when he's on Oklahoma. I mean, I'd argue Lincoln Riley's as good as Ryan Day, to be honest. I mean, I respect Lincoln Riley a lot. You know, like I think we're talking about quarterback development. He's the best. You know, so yeah, I'd still put Ryan Day 1 because I've dealt with it for so long, and you know, obviously Lincoln Riley being in Oklahoma, Big 12, like it's more distant for me. And I have watched USC, obviously, but like now we're gonna get real close and personal now. But I'll put Lincoln Riley 2, Chip Kelly probably 3, but Dan Lanning's pretty damn good. Where would you put Dan Lanning?
Well, I think Kenny Dillingham's the guy who worked with Bo Nix because they had a relationship going back to Auburn. It's going to be interesting to see, how Oregon handles the heat. Now, obviously, it wasn't Dillingham last year. He was at ASU, but still, Dillingham still he put Bo Nix in position to succeed at Oregon. Stein did a good job last year, but like there was a relationship in place. Kind of like Kalen DeBoer and Michael Penix. They had worked together at Indiana. They come back united Washington. So that it was similar with Dillingham and Nix having an established relationship at Auburn. So Bo Nix didn't just walk into a situation at Oregon where he didn't know anybody. No, he knew Dillingham, and that really paved the way for him. So definitely some unresolved questions at Oregon, but I will say that Oregon has Dylan Gabriel, and that really is the reason why Oregon, I think, is right there with Ohio State as a Big Ten favorite going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Lanning with Dillingham and now Will Stein. I've got to be honest. When he first had those choices, I was like, look at my chops. Like, this is great. But both those hires turned out to be just excellent choices. Both guys have done phenomenal. I mean, it's with Dillingham did so well. He got on the ASU job. I think that he's done a good job at picking offensive minds, but yeah, I think of him more as a defensive guy, obviously. But
yeah, he is. Really, I mean, he has a defensive background, but I don't know. I thought, from my understanding, Dan Lanning had input on the offense, though. Does he not?
Well, he's just done a really good job of picking OCs. Both of those he's come into Oregon and had top offenses. So yeah, he's really good at job at identifying those OCs.
The numbers probably won't speak to it this season, but I would be looking out for Eric Bieniemy at UCLA.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
you're just talking about who can do the job that doesn't have the personnel to get it done right now, but
right. Yeah.
See what he accomplished in the NFL.
But whose offense was that, Matt, in the NFL? I mean, Mark in the NFL.
Yeah, well, that's the question. Was it Andy Reid? Was it,
Yeah, no, but I think obviously you're around these coaches, you're going to pick up a lot. So it will be interesting. That's a very, I feel bad for UCLA in the fact that they had to throw that offensive, that coaching staff together. But for the time that they had, they did a pretty good, for when it happened to throw the staff together, they put together, I think they did a phenomenal job.
Tim, you really feel bad for UCLA? Really?
I lose sleep every week. You know, actually, the hatred's coming back for UCLA. I gotta admit, some of the,
good.
Lately, and for a while there was like, after a while, if you don't really have that, it's almost like you're like abusing your little brother or something at some point. But recent history is we can't lie, but the scoreboard doesn't lie. There's definitely gonna be a lot of payback on USC's mind for sure when it comes to the Bruins going forward.
I just want to make one comment, and not on anybody's remarks, just my own personal statement about who the best offensive mind is in the Big Ten, including the West Coast schools. If Marvin Harrison Jr. played for USC last season, USC wins at least 10 games. And I think that Ohio State has been this extraordinary receiver factory. Maybe, I get Ryan Day deserves credit for bringing in studs like that. But in terms of, the piece of, being able to make use of maximum weapons, for Ryan Day to not beat Michigan with Marvin Harrison, to me, that says it all about whether Lincoln Riley or Ryan Day is better.
But USC loses to freaking Washington and Oregon.
USC
didn't have the level of receiver talent that Ohio State did when Jordan Addison was there at USC in 2022. USC offense was a rocket ship, and so in many ways, we were thinking that Dorian Singer was going to be elite. We were thinking that Mario Williams was going to be elite. But I mean, if you give Lincoln Riley the best groceries, if you go to Whole Foods, get the number one wide receiver in all the land, as Ryan Day did with Marvin Harrison at Ohio State, Lincoln Riley's going to have an absolute knockout offense. And Ryan Day didn't do that with Ohio State last year. So to me, it's actually pretty clear. Give me Lincoln Riley number one all day, any day, over day.
Does that mean that Caleb Williams and Ryan Day get to join forces and Kyle McCord goes to USC? Because then if you're going to make that trade, then you got to say, okay, well, then Lincoln Riley has to take Kyle McCord with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Caleb Williams gets to go to Ohio State and Ryan Day gets to work with Caleb Williams.
Well, if you swap those out, it would be a different discussion. But in terms of what was available, I would say that Ohio State underperformed. Not more than USC, but like Ohio State had championship standards there and wasn't able to reach them. And of course, USC had the handicap of an Alex Grinch defense. That's just kind of its own separate conversation there. But strictly in terms of how well the offenses performed. I think USC scored 42 against Washington and had some other pretty credible decent performances over the season. Not spectacular, but so I think in terms of not just the quarterback obviously was USC's huge advantage, but in terms of the guys he had available to throw to, and in terms of what was there at Ohio State, to me, I think that you give Lincoln Riley the Cadillac talent at quarterback and wide receiver. I think that's my argument here. You give Lincoln Riley the best at both position groups, he's going to max out more than Ryan Day will.
Just a counter punch on that. Yes, Tim.
I was just saying, statistically last year with that offensive line that USC had, USC, correct if I'm wrong, weren't they like a top 3 offense in the country? I mean, it's not the best, but I would have to imagine, yes, you have Caleb Williams, but that offensive line, everyone that watched that Notre Dame, I got a school next to me, it might be burning down. Everyone that watched that offensive line knew what a mess that Lincoln Riley had to work with last year, and you still have a top 3 offense.
Well, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but my counterpoint to that would be, I would rather have the best quarterback in the country and a really good wide receiver room that USC had versus having a top 25 or 30 quarterback and an elite, arguably the best wide receiver room. I would make that trade any day because I think that the quarterback makes the receivers because the receivers at USC, it's not like that they were substandard or marginal in any way.
But we all know the going back again, we're ignoring the offensive line on USC was a mess. And so I think that's a mitigating factor to quarterback. It could turn. We saw what Caleb Williams did in 2022. Compare that to what he did in 2020. It's not that Caleb Williams got any worse. You know, Matt brings a good point. There was no Jordan Addison on this team, which changed overall. Overall, though, the effect on the offense of having the poor offensive line play made Caleb look human a bunch last year. He came down to earth a lot. Why? Because he literally had no time to throw. Again, just throw the film in of that Notre Dame game. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Meaning I would take on the NFL level Tom Brady and that revolving door of wide receivers constantly and a bunch of no names constantly, typically working through that. But I'll take Brady as the centerpiece and the constant over having the elite receivers. That's my take.
No, that's a great counterpoint, Mark. Matt, I think we might have to concede that one. I'll take Caleb over Marvin Harrison.
You know, I think Mark's point is that, you know, if you have a mature quarterback, who, commands respect and can control the game the way a Tom Brady like figure does, that means a lot. But I would say that dynamic operates a lot more effectively in the pros. You know, in college, if you have a dominant wide receiver one-on-one, he's not going up against an NFL caliber corner all the time. This is something Gary Danielson said a couple decades ago, doing a game with like Brent Musburger, like 20, 25 years ago. And I never forgot it. You know, the one-on-one matchups in college football, you can just repeatedly abuse them in ways that do not exist in the pros. So I think Mark's point really is a perfect assessment of the NFL game, but I think it's not necessarily the same in college.
TJ, any parting shots on USC, Michigan, the matchup, the history, the Big Ten?
Yeah, well, how about this? We should give a prediction. Like, who do we think is going to win? And let's give a score. Obviously, it can evolve. We're in June, so I mean, things can happen. Injuries can happen.
Michigan 27-13 is my prediction right now.
Okay.
27-13, huh?
Hey, Tim, remember, I'm the Josh Henson skeptic.
Yeah, right. Just staring down.
Matt was ready for that question, that prediction offering. He was ready.
Yeah, so I got a feeling that Matt might already have a very early prediction article in the works. I would have to say, yeah, I think USC covers. What is it, 10.5 right now?
I don't know. I don't even know what the spread is.
I have a lot of faith in this defense. I really do, and I think
why? Because you're coordinator. Why? Because you're a coordinator.
No, because of the piece we brought in, because of secondary. Because a couple things here. Ready? Like you said, people have said here, if they stack the box, we had the kind of corners. We brought in really good corners. We try to make Orgy throw the ball to beat us with your receivers against our. Yeah. And I don't think that you guys do realize it. So yes, you are a Henson skeptic, which I'm fine with. And I know that this defense is going to be pretty damn stout. But we have receivers that I don't think that the Big Ten is ready for. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. I just don't. I think that we Ohio State? The worry.
Washington said the same thing, man.
The worry I have is going to be later in the game. Okay. And the depth that USC has is going to become a problem. And it's kind of be, I look at some of those Ohio State games where it's tight, slugging, and then just the depth and the body blows through 3 quarters that USC is going to take. I don't know if they have the bodies yet to take those blows. And so even though it's early in the season, it's going to be really interesting to see if USC can play 4 quarters. If this game ended, if we played 3 quarters of football, then I'm a lot more optimistic. But I think you get in that 4th quarter against the way Michigan plays football, if you're not rotating your line, you're going to have some tired guys. And then Donovan Edwards is going to break one off and run, 80 yards down the field. And all of a sudden it went from being a 9-point game to a 16-point game. in 5 seconds. So, I mean, that's really what, well, not 5 seconds, but you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing I'm worrying about. Matt, you're looking at what you said, 2 touchdowns. I forgot your score again.
You're muted.
I think you're muted.
I think if Miller Moss is going to have a really bad game this season, it's the Michigan game. For every possible reason. Michigan's quality. It's early in the season. Our friend Nick Shepkowski from Fighting Irish Wire obviously chiming in here on the chat. And Nick knows that, Brian Kelly's defense is going to get shredded by Miller Moss and USC in week 1. So USC is going to come into Michigan thinking, oh, this thing's pretty easy. And then Michigan's going to put the clamps on.
I would be shocked if USC does not score 14 points, Matt. Yeah, I'm thinking more USC is going to lose. I don't see USC staying with Michigan. And my reasoning, again, is purely speculation because there's a lot of young, unproven talent that's coming into USC, which could change. We could see that. Who knows what the LSU game? And maybe you come back after LSU and Texas games, right? And we'll take a look at.
Tim, what's your score? I'm sensing. I'm going
31. I'm going to go 31.
21.
Oh, that's almost my score.
That would be covered by a half a point. I'll say at 31-23. That weird some field goals in there.
Mine's 31-20. So we're in the same ballpark. I do think USC will get more than 14. I think USC, but I do agree though that stacking the box against Michigan, I don't know what that means yet. That could be a problem. We're going to find out though.
As soon as Matt delivered 27-13, I thought, Matt, you are not respecting Lincoln Riley in this USC offense. But the more he talked and the rest of us talked, it ruminated more and more. And I thought, I'm just about there as well. Just to be different and add a point or two, I guess I'll go 27-17. Because if I take USC in the 10.5, or maybe it'll balloon a couple points before kickoff, and I'll run with that. 27-17.
I just want to say something here. So, I know Tim, he was hesitated when I said 27-13. There was just that initial reaction. I mean, I think Michigan's better than USC. That does not mean that USC is going to be a rubbish football team this season. Right. This is the most likely loss on USC's schedule. And USC is probably going to lose at least one other game, maybe 2. But just this is in the big house, and it's early in the season with a non-Caleb Williams quarterback. This sets up as a loss. But it's not a verdict on USC. It's that Michigan's better, and the game sets up well for Michigan. Being at home, it's not a verdict. People should not read this as a verdict on USC.
It's the actual score, Matt.
It's a game USC's likely to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue saying USC's going to lose. I mean, I think that most people, if they're betting their own money, if they're betting their mortgage on this game, not a lot of even Trojan fans are going, yeah, let's bet the mortgage on SC, because there's question marks on both sides, right? But there's continuity on both sides. But the issue I'm having is, one, here's what's going to come down to in my book. Is Michigan going to score 27 or 31 points? I mean, I think we're giving that offense a lot of credit that may not be worthy of it. And the second side of it is will USC's defense not be able to hold up? That's the point. Well, my number is where I'm having trouble with what they're going to score. I'm telling you, I'll come right now and I will eat. You can serve my crow up nice and fat. If USC doesn't score at least 14 points, I'll be right here on camera apologizing to Michigan Nation, because I'm telling you, when was the last time Lincoln Riley, right? When was the last time Lincoln Riley here's the game that worries me is last year's Notre Dame game. Okay. That worries me about this kind of the matchup.
What did they score in that game? Wasn't that 31-13? What was the final score of that game?
Because I was trying to think in my head the last time that they scored less than 2 touchdowns. That's why it's right there. That's the game that I can think of. The last time Lincoln Riley scored, what? You guys talking about 13 under 2 touchdowns. When was the last time Lincoln Riley offense scored 1 touchdown in a game? I mean, it could be that Notre Dame score. I have that's traumatic to me. That game literally was, I was sitting there watching the game with all the interceptions and just shaking my head. Like, is this offense, is this offensive line really this bad? And I watched about 5 plays. I said, yes, this offensive line really is this bad.
Yeah.
Notre Dame 48-20.
20, and USC scored a garbage touchdown late in the game. So, you know, we can knock that one around. But Tim, you're predicting USC.
By the way, scoring points. They were not going against their fifth string defense, Matt. It was late in the game. They did score a touchdown.
Yeah, Tim, but Tim, you're predicting that USC is going to score 23. So, like, there's a 10-point difference here, and you're saying, it'll be stunning if USC doesn't score 14 points. We're just talking about 10 points, man.
Because if you guys remember my conversation,
if you felt USC was going to score at least 30, okay, but
you guys were
over 10 points.
I wouldn't put it. Wait, hold on. Do anyone on this panel think that USC is not capable of scoring 30 next year or this year? I mean, anyone here think they're not capable of it?
I don't think they get 30 on Michigan.
Let me get a word in.
Go on.
Earlier, when you guys were going through the quarterback and the wide receiver, again, I always think line. And I'm sorry, no matter how good your quarterback is, even if it's Tom Brady, if he's got like a second to throw the ball, that was an aberration. If that's the offensive line we have this year, you guys, we got way bigger issues than losing a game in Ann Arbor. We're going to be losing a hell of a lot of games if that's the offense. I don't think this offensive line we're going to see that this year. I think this is a much improved offensive line. And I think you see them play as a team much more than you did as individuals you probably saw last year. And I would be shocked if USC doesn't score 20 points in this game.
And final scores can be somewhat deceiving. So it sounds like Tim's prediction is 20-13 game going into the fourth quarter. And maybe Michigan goes on some classic 6 or 7 minute drive and just rams it down USC's throat to salt away the game. And that could be, not that that's Tim's prediction, but if it's Matt's prediction fulfilled in Tim's mind, it would be 20-13 entering the fourth quarter. And then Michigan puts together a classic 7 minute drive and rams it down their throats to ice the game 27-13.
I think it's close going into the fourth quarter. And then USC's defense just folds, yeah. But not because of the talent scheme. I'm saying they take those 3 like Michigan football, body blow, and then there's just nothing left in the tank in the fourth quarter. Mark, like we've seen Ohio State. I mean, that's what that was. It 2 years ago. What was that game where it was like close, and over? Why?
21-22, both games in different ways. But
then the fourth quarter was just like this. You start seeing just the flood. That's the scenario I'm talking about. And that's what I'm fearful about. But I'm also saying that's not we're talking in June. We don't know what does anyone really here know what either one of these teams are going to be come September? I don't think we do.
And that's why it's great that they're both playing a big time opponent before this game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, our quarterback and wide receiver situation is an unknown. That's this. So I don't know the ceiling for the team. You know, it's a big question mark. You know, and it's going to really limit Michigan's ability this season if it's not where it needs to be. You know, and I don't know if it will be. I think it will be, but I don't know.
Matt, let's do it. $50. I say we scored 20 points. $50 right now. We got on the record. Let's go. $50. You're telling me SC will score 20 points in Ann Arbor.
You make money writing for the website I edit. So how about you just write a few more stories? And that'll be the money that you make.
Well, but what I'm saying is, what do I do if I win? I keep my job. All right.
There you go.
We better catch. Let's catch these super chats while you guys mull over your bet, because I offered a $1,000 bet to the Michigan audience last week. But anyway, Matthew Miller's here. We appreciate Matthew, host of our Texas show. Who is the second best quarterback in the Big Ten? Weak quarterback conference. Second best quarterback.
I don't know. Not Will Howard.
You don't think it's Will Howard? It's probably, I don't believe right this second it's Drew Aller, but I think it probably will be.
Drew Aller? What? I think Will Howard's better than Drew Aller. And I don't even like Will Howard.
He was last season, but things change.
Miller Moss is better than either one of them. So why are we talking about those two?
Based on one game? Drew Aller's going to get better.
He's got a better game.
He's going to get better. People get better.
he's
like I took all sorts of hell when I said Bryce Young was the best quarterback in the country and ranked him number 1 in my video. People were like, he's only thrown 6 passes last year. What happened? He won the Heisman Trophy. So things change. You have to project some things. You have to be a visionary slightly.
Yeah, I hear you, but I've seen Drew Aller. I've watched a lot of Drew Aller, and I just don't think he's got it. I think he's very inconsistent. He can't throw a long range ball.
You may be right. Well, he won a football game by throwing a 75-yard touchdown pass down the sideline.
Yeah,
so
but I just don't think he's a winner, man. I don't know. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big Drew Aller fan. I actually think Penn State's gonna really. They're not gonna have the season they want because Drew Aller is not the quarterback they're looking for. I mean, they think he is, but he's not.
We at USC definitely hope you're right when the Nittany Lions come to the Coliseum.
Let's narrow down the list. It's Gabriel, it's Howard, it's Moss,
and Aller. Beyond that,
Will Rogers.
You're really Will Rogers, but
we do not have to answer that question now. I think that's a commentary in itself.
Who's had the more prolific careers? That's pretty easy, Gabriel and Rogers. But who's gonna?
Oh yeah, by far those are the two guys.
Who's the best quarterback? That's a whole different conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the question is who's second best. I think it assumes that Dylan Gabriel is the best.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I think it's a close call, but I think Will Howard's the most accomplished. He's proven the most in terms of winning and statistics. To Tim's point, Will Rogers by far statistically is the best.
We're talking about careers right now.
Those two guys are going to be like top 5 statistically in the history of college football by the end of this season. Both of them, like attempts, completions, yards, touchdowns, all of that. If that's what you're looking at,
I'd say it's probably between Will Howard and Miller Moss.
Just to go retrace on Drew Aller because just to retrace on Aller for a moment, because this is, we have a Michigan guest here, TJ, and I think the point to make is Drew Aller lost to an opponent which ran the ball the last 2.5 quarters of a game.
Right.
Like that is uniquely bad. That is a unique failure that he has to own and which he has to overcome this season.
Yeah. I also think his offensive coordinator and his wide receivers should own quite a bit, having watched every play of that game.
Yeah, but like
he wasn't good. He wasn't good against Ohio State or Michigan.
He gets happy feet. He gets panicky. He makes poor decisions. It's like he doesn't see the field. Like I just don't believe in him.
As a first-time starting quarterback, he did.
That's true. We'll see. We'll see this year, Mark. I don't know. I'm not buying the
I'm
Drew
not
Aller
making
spot.
any prediction. I'm just saying, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised.
Okay.
All right, Slap Happy. We appreciate you being here. We better not suck this year. Fight on. FUCLA.
I think he's making a habit of that post. I think he's sticking with it. I think that's going to be his credo through the entire season until he's satisfied. Let's put it that way.
TJ, appreciate you being here, man. Everybody catch TJ on Tuesday and Thursday nights over on the Michigan channel. It's 8 p.m. Eastern time that was against a non-Big Ten defense, of course, Miller Moss's performance.
Yeah, but hold on. Yeah, that Louisville defense would rank pretty high, roughly, in the Big Ten. Maybe not in the top 3 or 4, but it would be definitely top half.
Having played ACC offenses. No, Louisville was a decent team, yes, but let's not.
Hold on. Who is feeding on Big Ten West offenses? Let's not go there, Mark. I mean,
let's not stack up Louisville's defense to be Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan or Iowa. They weren't as good as any. You don't play those 3 every week. It's literally impossible. Throw Iowa in
9
there
teams.
Those 4. Yeah. Louisville was good, and he was good in the game. He's played 1 game. He was spectacular in that game.
Who's his coach again? I forgot his coach.
He was spectacular in that game.
Okay, we need Mark to tell everyone again where they can find TJ and how they can follow his work.
Tuesday and Thursday nights over on the Michigan channel. Great time with TJ, John, Ferris, and the crew. Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern time. The big call-in show is Thursdays at 9 Eastern.
8 p.m.
Oh,
Yeah, we moved it to 8. Because it was getting late with all the calls. But yeah, no, great shows. Thanks for having me on, guys. Tim, Matt, Mark. Honestly, great discussion. We will definitely do it again, especially the week of the game. We definitely got to do some stuff for that. So thanks for having me on, guys. It was a blast. Go Blue. And hopefully your defense doesn't get figured out. But we'll talk about that when we talk next. So have a good one. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, TJ. Awesome conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And of course, these are the two guys that make it happen here on our USC channel. It's Matt Zemek. It's Tim Prangley, our hosts and analysts here on the USC channel at the Voice of College Football. And of course, they do their work over on Trojan's Wire first and foremost. So Matt, what's going on over there?
Well, we're waiting for recruiting splashes. It's been quiet. And I wrote earlier today, don't panic yet. That kids are going through their visits. They want to be wined and dined. They want to make the rounds. So I don't think there's cause for concern right now. But of course, if we're here in a couple of weeks and still haven't had a whole lot of activity, well, then that'll be a different story. So we're waiting for, that recruiting avalanche and a lot more Lincoln Riley emojis. So we'll see what the next 2 weeks bring.
And this is the list of recruits that's coming in this weekend. And the level of we were talking about the defense, we're talking about high school recruiting and those things. This is really what we're talking about when there was a shift. I can't remember, Mark, was it before the show or was it during the show when I talked about it? Was before the show. We're talking to TJ. The difference in USC recruiting now is USC, because of what happened, the Tennessee ruling, USC is no longer playing around with not using NIL and going after high school recruits. And you have seen a huge difference, with Justice Terry committing. He's going to be when the commits are going to be there, along with Big Gus Cordova. This is something special. There's going to be some battles here. USC clearly is not going to get all these guys, but this is just 2 of the past 3 weeks. And this will be 3 out of 4 weeks. USC has brought in some of the top players, in the country. And the difference in USC recruiting, high school recruiting, compared to last year, it cannot be understated. The fact that it's just been a complete shift. And why is that? Did they become better coaches? No. It's just now they're entering into the NIL game with high school players like many of the other top programs. And that lands USC, depending where you're looking at, 3 or 4 in the country in June, which is very early. But we should be hearing some more big-time commitments during this weekend and see how strong USC can close as they get to December and they get some signatures with the season. That's why this season will be so important on the field.
Matthew Miller is looking for some predictions as well. Who makes the playoffs from the Big Ten?
It's going to be hard for Ohio State to miss, especially within the 12-team playoff era. That you can certainly lose 1 game. You could probably even lose 2. If you go 10-2, you're still going to get in. So, if Ohio State doesn't go 10-2, then Ryan Day's definitely gone.
One of my favorite statistics: the last 12-team playoff, Ohio State would have missed 2004.
Oh, yeah, really. That's right.
Most people are predicting Ohio State and Oregon, correct? I mean, that's really what
that's kind of the
that's the chalk on this. I'm not. Again, I am the optimist on this panel. I think if this defense is fixed, if the defense and the offensive line is fixed, like I thought, it is not. And I repeat, not out of the realm. USC could sneak in the back door on this.
Oh, I agree. I trust that Penn State's probably better than USC, but I believe USC has a higher ceiling than Penn State. I would say 3 out of the Big Ten, and that third is most likely going to be Michigan. If not Michigan, USC. If not USC, Penn State.
That's about right.
That sounds fair.
Appreciate y'all being here. Matt, Tim, these guys are phenomenal. Please support their work over on Trojan's Wire. We will see them back on Friday. We got a big week at the Voice of College Football. I'll just highlight a couple things briefly. 11 a.m. Eastern Time, SEC show. That's Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And then you Michigan fans may want to stick around for this one. Wednesday night with Tony Altimore, we take the deep dive on Ohio State versus Michigan, a deep dive historically.
Ooh.
And we look at budgets, academics, everything. That should be interesting. And then the Big Ten live show also features Tony Altamore. We bring him back on Friday night, the Big Ten live show, where we feature Washington, USC, UCLA, and Oregon, their entries into the Big Ten, how they stack up, budgets, academics, football culture, everything across the board, athletic departments, all of it thrown in. So big week at the Voice of College Football.
Those are great ads for Trojan fans to go check out. But we are done over there. Make sure you come over to us for the Conquest call-in show, 7, again, remember, new time, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, where we take your guys' calls. You guys are stars of the show. You call, let us know what you want to talk about. Matt and I will always have a couple topics, but again, it is your show. Call up, let us know what you want to talk about.
You will see these guys Friday at 7 Pacific. Thanks for being here.